Behind the glamorous cafes of Paris and the lavender fields of Provence, many people in France face a reality far different from the dream sold to tourists. While the country is admired for its culture, luxury, and romance, everyday life here can also come with rising costs, social tension, overcrowded cities, and deep cultural frustrations that outsiders rarely see. In today's travel documentary, we'll explore the hidden struggles, uncomfortable truths, and dark realities of living in modern France. The dual faces of Paris, Glitz versus Grit. When you think of France, what do you imagine? For many, it's the dazzling runway models dressed in Chanel, Louis Vuitton, or Dior. Or perhaps the Eiffel Tower twinkling under the night sky. Paris is undeniably the cultural heart of Europe, a city that embodies the luxury and sophistication of French history, arts, and design. But today we need to ask ourselves, is that really the full story? Or is there a hidden, darker reality that few care to see? As you venture off the main streets of Paris, a different picture emerges, one that photographer David Tasinski has documented and described as the city of fake romance. Far from the tourist-favored Champs-Élysées, you see exhausted faces wrapped in mismatched clothes. The old coats, worn-out shoes, and disheveled appearances speak to a hidden reality of struggle. In a place known for haute couture, the contrast is deeply jarring. Did you know that there are over 330,000 homeless people across France, with about 3,000 struggling to survive in the cold winter of Paris each year? These individuals are not just statistics. They are people with stories, hopes, and dreams that have been set aside by the harsh reality of urban life. The glamorous lights outside the city make it easy to forget this side of France. But the reality for many in the so-called City of Light is far from romantic. Behind the facade of fashion and luxury, many people go unnoticed, sleeping in doorways, begging near traffic lights, or setting up tents along the River Seine. The stark divide between the glamorous Parisian streets and the quieter, more somber neighborhoods filled with homeless camps is something most tourists never see. It's a reality that casts doubt on the image of Paris as a purely romantic haven. Poverty beyond the postcards. Poverty in France is not only evident on the streets of Paris, it's hidden in the daily lives of many families and individuals who can barely make ends meet. Around 4.15 million people live in rundown homes, places so cramped that they lack essential elements like proper kitchens, bathrooms, or even heating. These living conditions are not only uncomfortable, but also hazardous. Many of these homes are old and poorly maintained, contributing to chronic health issues and even posing fire risks. Take, for example, the town of Roubaix, located in the north of France. Here, poverty seems to be deeply ingrained. Abandoned cars pile up in old train stations, and many families can't afford even minor repairs. The anxiety over basic needs lingers in the air. What will we eat when the money runs out by the 20th? How can I tell my children there's no weekend outing again? Some even burn scrap wood during winter because they simply cannot afford rising gas prices. The reality of many working-class French people often clashes with the romanticized notion of leisurely afternoons spent at quaint French bistros, enjoying fine wine and rich conversations. In many of these smaller towns, the lack of economic opportunity has created a cycle of poverty that feels impossible to break. Jobs are scarce, and for those lucky enough to find work, Wages often do not cover the basic cost of living. It's a vicious cycle that leads many families to make impossible choices, deciding whether to pay for heat or buy groceries, whether to fix a leaky roof or purchase new shoes for their children. And that's not all. Nearly 12.1 million people, approximately 1 in 6, live under conditions that could be described as substandard. The hidden scourge of pollution in Paris. Alongside poverty, another facet of France's lesser-seen reality is its pollution. Paris may be known as the City of Light, but today, many Parisian streets tell a much darker story. By March 2023, the city streets were piled with over 10,000 tons of garbage, equivalent to the weight of the Eiffel Tower itself. If the waste were stacked up, it would be 1.3 times taller than the Eiffel Tower, a staggering visual that flies in the face of the city's glamorous image. The ongoing garbage crisis in Paris is partly due to labor strikes and inefficient waste management systems, but it's also reflective of a deeper issue, the consumption habits and waste culture that permeate urban life. The unpleasant truth is that public urination is common, and despite efforts to curb this with public facilities, the odor lingers in some parts of the city. Water pollution, too, remains a constant issue. The Seine River, often romanticized in art and literature, is frequently tainted with trash and industrial runoff. In fact, the 2024 Olympics had to postpone the men's triathlon event due to poor water quality, despite a $1.4 billion cleanup effort. The stark truth is that despite these initiatives, pollution remains a persistent and pervasive problem, affecting not just the aesthetic beauty of the river, but also its ecological health. Fish populations in the Seine have dwindled, and swimming in its waters remains highly unsafe. Air pollution is also a considerable concern. On numerous occasions, Paris has exceeded safe PM 2.5 levels set by the World Health Organization. During the winter of 2023, PM 2.5 levels reached 50 micrograms per cubic meter, twice the acceptable limit. These particulates are dangerous and pose serious health risks for everyone, particularly children, the elderly, and those with pre-existing health conditions. This has serious health implications for residents and even visitors, leading to higher rates of respiratory issues and cardiovascular diseases. Would you still be as eager to visit Paris if you knew the air quality might impact your health? Rural and urban inequalities. The gap between urban and rural France is becoming ever more evident, especially when it comes to access to education. Students in rural areas face unique challenges, from reduced rail services and rising fuel costs to struggles with the university admission system called Parcours Up. Since Parcours Up was introduced in 2018, geographic filters have been used, which often disadvantage students in rural areas who want to apply to major universities in urban areas like Paris. Imagine you're an outstanding student from a small village working hard to gain admission to a prestigious university. However, the application process prioritizes urban students, making it far more challenging for rural talents to break through. This unfair advantage leaves many rural students frustrated and demotivated. Recent data shows that the acceptance rate for urban students at top schools is about 30% higher than for rural students with similar achievements. Access to quality education is often touted as the key to breaking out of poverty. But when educational opportunities are more accessible to urban dwellers than rural residents, the cycle of poverty remains unbroken. Many rural students who wish to pursue higher education have to leave their families and support systems behind, often relocating to more expensive cities, which places an additional financial burden on their families. French women, the reality behind romance. Another aspect of France that is often overlooked is the struggle faced by women, especially in a country synonymous with romance and equality. While French women are admired worldwide for their elegance and independence, the real story is often more complex. Women still face significant pay gaps in many industries, particularly in top-level positions. For example, a female executive in finance in Paris might earn $77,500 annually, while her male counterpart could easily make $90,000 to $95,000. The issue of workplace inequality extends beyond just pay. Women in many industries face barriers to promotions, and their contributions are often undervalued compared to their male colleagues. Many French women take pride in living independently, choosing career ambition and financial autonomy over traditional marriage. However, social pressure can be intense. Questions like, "Why aren't you married?" or "When will you have children?" are still common. Moreover, women in France face unique pressures when it comes to balancing career and family life. The French ideal of the superwoman who seamlessly manages work, family, and personal care is often an unrealistic expectation that leads to burnout. And for those who do marry, challenges remain. The romantic image of French men does not always match reality. Studies show that 45% of marriages in France are unhappy, which places the country as the 7th highest in Europe for marital dissatisfaction. French women often find that after marriage, the grand gestures of romance fade, replaced by emotional detachment. This has led many French women to reconsider their roles and reassess their pursuit of happiness, leading to higher rates of divorce and a growing number of women seeking relationships abroad. In 2023, about 35,600 marriages were between French citizens and foreigners, a growing trend that reflects an evolving outlook on what brings true happiness. Life on the roads, traffic and transport issues. Anyone who's driven in France, especially in Paris, knows that traffic congestion is a daily struggle. With 39.5 million cars across the country, France ranks 4th in Europe in terms of car ownership. The sheer number of vehicles contributes to long hours of gridlock, air pollution, and frayed tempers. It's not uncommon for Parisian residents to spend over 140 hours each year sitting in traffic. This might surprise you, especially in a country that prides itself on a highly developed public transportation system. Yet public transit is not without its challenges. Many of the roads and subway systems were built long before the current population and traffic demands, and today they can barely cope. Paris's metro system, while iconic, is aging and struggling to keep up with the growing demand. The buses, too, are often crowded and delayed, making daily commutes a frustrating experience for many residents. Compared to Tokyo, which has a population density greater than Paris, the difference in transportation efficiency is striking. Public transportation in Paris also faces issues of accessibility, particularly for those with disabilities or the elderly. Many metro stations lack elevators, making it difficult for individuals who cannot use stairs. As the population continues to grow, Paris will need significant investments in infrastructure to accommodate both its residents and the millions of tourists who visit each year. scams and safety concerns for tourists. If you think traveling in France is entirely safe, think again. Scams and petty theft are rampant, particularly in tourist areas, and tourists are frequently targeted by sophisticated scams. Take, for instance, the friendship bracelet scam at the Sacré-Cœur Basilica. A seemingly friendly local might approach you offering to tie a bracelet around your wrist while chatting casually. Before you know it, they are demanding payment at an exorbitant rate, sometimes threatening tourists who refuse to pay. Another common scam occurs along the Seine River. Picture yourself walking near the river when suddenly someone picks up a gold ring and claims you dropped it. They insist you take it only to later beg for a reward. It's a trick designed to make you feel obligated, and if you don't comply, the situation could escalate quickly. The people involved in these scams are often very persuasive, making it difficult for unsuspecting tourists to refuse their advances without feeling guilty or pressured. Even more alarming are the scams involving staged games, like the 3 cups and a ball trick in the Champs de Mars Park. The participants you see winning in these games are often accomplices. These are not isolated incidents. They are well-organized scams that prey on tourists every day. They work in teams to ensure that bystanders believe the game is legitimate, creating an illusion of fairness that draws people in. On top of scams, there is the risk of pickpocketing. Paris is known for its artistic sophistication, but it's also notorious for skilled pickpockets. Tourists are prime targets, especially those distracted by the stunning sights of Paris. Pickpocketing is so prevalent that even locals advise tourists to avoid crowded areas like the metro during rush hours. Healthcare and tax burdens. France has long been praised for its healthcare system, yet it's not without its flaws. One of the biggest issues is overcrowding in public hospitals, especially in rural areas, where it's not uncommon for people to wait weeks, if not months, for specialist care. Public hospitals in France are often overburdened, understaffed, and struggling with outdated facilities. This results in long waiting times that can lead to worsening health conditions for patients who cannot afford private health care. The disparity between urban and rural healthcare facilities is also quite pronounced. In rural areas, the lack of specialists and advanced medical equipment often means that residents must travel long distances for necessary medical care. Healthcare isn't the only area that feels expensive. Taxes are incredibly high compared to other countries. The income tax rate can reach as high as 45%, compared to 37% in the US. The standard value-added tax (VAT) rate is also a steep 20%, applied to almost everything from meals at a restaurant to buying souvenirs. Imagine buying a $2,000 handbag in Paris only to have an additional $400 added in VAT. For those who dream of buying real estate in France, the costs can be even more staggering. Buying a house worth $300,000 means paying up to $21,000 in transfer taxes. This high taxation significantly increases the overall cost of living and makes it challenging for young professionals to achieve financial stability. It's a stark contrast compared to other European nations like the UK, where these fees are much lower. The real cost of living in France. Daily expenses in France are similarly high, particularly in major cities like Paris. Rent for a one-bedroom apartment in central Paris often starts at $1,500 a month, nearly double what you might pay for a similar place in Lisbon or Berlin. Finding affordable housing is an ongoing issue, and many residents struggle with the high cost of rent, which takes up a significant portion of their monthly income. This is particularly true for young professionals and students who are new to the city. Transportation costs are also significant. A monthly metro pass will set you back anywhere from $85 to $100, which can quickly add up, particularly if you are on a tight budget. Food and entertainment are also costly. A basic meal at a simple restaurant costs at least $15 to $20, while dining at a mid-range restaurant can run up to $70 per person. Even a cup of coffee can cost $4 to $5, which is significantly more than in other European cities. While the experience of sipping coffee at a Parisian cafe might be worth the premium, it's certainly not for those looking to travel on a budget. Living in France can also be challenging if you enjoy cultural activities. Attending a movie screening can cost $12 to $15, and museum tickets to the Louvre or the Musée d'Orsay range from $5 to $20, a considerable expense if you want to enjoy these experiences frequently. For those thinking of moving to Paris or planning an extended stay, the monthly living expenses could range anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000. Do you think this cost is reasonable for the lifestyle you would get? While the city certainly has its allure.
Go there anyways, just, it'll be a little bit faster.
Visa process and hidden obstacles for travelers. Before we wrap up this travel documentary, let's address one more hurdle: the visa application process. Even travelers from stable countries like the US or EU may find the visa application process for France unexpectedly cumbersome. Proof of financial stability documentation of travel history and health insurance requirements can make it seem more like a bureaucratic nightmare than a smooth journey into one of the world's most celebrated destinations. The complexity of the visa process has deterred many potential visitors who find the paperwork and stringent requirements overwhelming. And to add insult to injury, visa fees are non-refundable, even if the visa is denied. This can make it all the more frustrating for first-time visitors or those wanting to make frequent visits. Imagine planning a long-awaited trip only to have your visa rejected, your plans dashed, and your money lost. The non-refundable nature of the fees means that applicants take on significant financial risks when they decide to apply. Even those who are well prepared with all necessary documentation can face long waiting times for approval, which adds to the uncertainty. The visa hurdles don't end there. Many travelers have reported inconsistency in how applications are reviewed, with some applicants needing additional documents that weren't initially requested. This unpredictability can create anxiety and frustration, making the dream of visiting France seem less attainable. Is it worth it to go through all of these bureaucratic challenges for a chance to explore the country? Conclusion: is France still your dream destinations? In this travel documentary, we have uncovered a France that is rarely discussed, one that contrasts the glitz and glamour of the City of Light. We've journeyed through the poverty that grips both cities and countryside, the inequality and social challenges faced by many, and the pollution that taints the image of Paris. We have also explored the struggles women face, the difficulties of living costs, the scams and pickpocketing risks for tourists, and the burdensome taxation and healthcare realities. Is France still the romantic, perfect dream destination that many of us imagine it to be? Or does it seem like the challenges and obstacles could outweigh the postcard beauty? Would you still want to visit knowing what lies beneath the surface? The stories of poverty, pollution, and bureaucratic hurdles provide a more nuanced picture of a country that is often idealized. For some, the allure of Paris's history, culture, and charm may still outweigh these concerns, while for others, the challenges may be enough to look elsewhere. Before we close, we invite you to share your thoughts. Do you agree with our take on France, or do you have a different experience? Let us know in the comments below.